A beautiful weather on Katampe Hills, the headquarters of ASO Radio and Television Station, and this is Business and Economy, a program package to increase your business horizon, and today's focus is on the role of the media in economic development. I am Ile Emeje. It is a known fact that politics and economy are closely related and interwoven, or to say more, positively correlated. In other words, whatever happens in political engineering will directly impact on the economy. Consequently, sound political activism will directly lead to buoyant economic development. This is not far-fetched from the understanding that the managers of the economy are hired through political processes. Meanwhile, the media plays a pivotal role in ensuring a balance between politics and economy through objectivity in information dissemination towards effective implementation of policies. On today's edition of the program, the project coordinator, public policy specialist of the Search for Common Ground Nigeria, Mr. Perry Tukuwe, is joining us after the business news to discuss on the topic. Stay with us. Equity sector of the Nigerian capital market transacted in a turnover of 1.101 billion stocks last week, valued at 11.714 billion naira in 15,697 deals. Geregu was top on the advancers with a profit of 130%, while MRS and X-Transact appreciated by 12.85% and 3.50%. Conversely, Prestige Assurance led the decliners with a loss of 15.2%, followed by Len Africa and Guinness Nigeria, shared in 10.71% and 9.95%. In volume terms, the financial services industry, the conglomerates, and the oil and gas index were the most active units, contributing in 859 million stocks, 96.9 million stocks, and 40.8 million stocks in that order. During the week, major indicators dipped by 0.68% to close on a high of 43,968 units and 23.9 trillion naira. Meanwhile, the naira appreciated against the dollar on the parallel market by 8.72% to sell at 740 naira to the dollar, 860 naira to the pound sterling, and 740 naira to the euro. As I mentioned earlier, our guest is the project coordinator, public policy specialist for Search for Common Ground Nigeria, Mr. Perry Tukuwe. Mr. Tukuwe is a doctoral research fellow with interest in development studies, public policy, elections, and governance. Mr. Tukuwe, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. What is your interest in the performance of the media in balancing politics and the economy? Like I said in the introduction, politics and economy are interwoven. They go hand in hand. It's like one cannot do without the other. So what is your own interest in balancing information or balancing the economy and politics?
So ideally, if we look at the various sectors that we have, for example, we will see that as political scientists, we like to look at it from the prism of the political economy of finance, the political economy of politics, and all of that. So what that means essentially is the fact that, like you said, when you have politics and the economy interwoven, the outputs resonates around sound policies, resonates around the formulation of very key policies, to drive the trajectory of a particular country or a state, in the right path. So the idea is the economy, that's the mix. Sales, goods and services, and then we have politics. So politics, for example, can also be replaced with, let's say, public policy. So the idea is, while politics is saddled with the responsibility of formulating policies to drive the economy, in the right path. So you can now see that the both of them actually are interwoven. One, they're just like the Siamese twins. One cannot do without the other. And what best medium to convey these policies, these goods, sales of goods and services, and other mix, and that's where the media comes in. So to the extent of which whatever happens in politics and whatever happens in the economy play would also be determined on how free and how independent the media is. So for example, if you want to, we can locate this argument in the Media for Development thesis that says once there's the free and independent media, then it is possible that the sort of output that comes from either politics or environment has a positive note to play in a particular country. Okay. The question now is, for example, there is what ought to be and there is what is. The question that resonates will now be, is our media fair? Is our media independent? Does our media carry all sides? So when we mean all sides, for example, are we taking the views of, let's say, marginalized voices? Are we amplifying voices of people who hitherto would just stay and people don't know what is happening about them? And this is where all these conversations come on. Okay. So the idea is politics, the economy, a free and independent media goes hand in hand. But like I said, the rhetorical question that comes to our mind is
it fair?
Exactly.
Do we have a fair environment for the media to report as it ought to be?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, on a general note, what is your understanding on the major role of the media or the journalist? Most of the time, these words are interwoven. When you say the media, we refer to the journalist or the journalist as the media. Generally speaking, here and in other developed countries, what do you think or you understand as the general role of the media?
So the media over 3 decades now has evolved.
Yeah.
So the way the media used to be like in the 70s or in the 80s has evolved and metamorphosed to what it is now. So it started, for example, growing up, let's say in the 80s and early 90s, I mean, everybody would love the newspaper. I remember, like, as a kid, the vendors would have this, pom-pom, so when you hear that thing, you just
know that
if you're someone like less current affairs, you will see, like, and so I had this neighbor who, as it just comes, and then they throw the newspaper or they put it probably near the house. So that's how the media has evolved. Everybody wanted to find out what was happening, and where you go to was the point. So the media, for example, has the propensity to actually change stereotypes. That's the pivotal role that the media plays. So up until television also came into being, of course, with the first television station, that's Western TV in Ibadan. And that also evolved. So it was, and of course, you know, growing up also, we had our favorite television programs. And we also had our favorite personalities that we mimic. You know, on television. So from across business, the economy, I remember Yinka Craig, you know, and so many others. So for example, when someone asks you about what is going to happen next, they say, wait, there's Newsline at 9. There's also, you know, that's the platform where people get the information. But you'd agree with me that in the last 3 years, there's been an upsurge in what a lot of us refer to as the new media. So that's the social media. I mean, these days it feels like, I mean, so this morning I was coming and my phone told me I had spent 7 hours screen time on my phone daily. 7 hours. That was like the statistics I got, the data I got from my phone daily. You know what that tells you? That's what everyone is going to for information. So there's a conversation if the traditional media seems to be fading away and the new media taking over. The argument is located in the theory that they both play complementary roles. Now, that's where you talk about journalism. So, in the traditional media, for example, we have ethics. It is guided
professional
ethics. It is guided by rules, guided by regulations. For example, you can't use foul languages on TV and radio. The NBC hammer will fall on you. But it seems to have like a free day on the social media where there are little or no regulations. So everything goes, and that determines on how you can decipher which is right, which is wrong, which information is credible, which information has the propensity to increase violence offline. You know, so all these conversations come. And then the role of the journalist, very, 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 very pivotal in all of those. Because when you have the media platforms that convey all these messages.
Yeah.
You now have the journalist himself, the media stakeholder himself, who actually now drives this. So media stakeholders, for example, back home staffs, we have program producers, we have those that actually go out to fetch the news, reporters, broadcast journalists,
Script writers,
editors,
and
those
the
behind the
rest of them.
teleprompter,
Yeah.
all these people play very integral roles, in driving this. And that's why you see that if you look at it, the media is also a voyage for development. It plays a very key role. Like, we don't even need to mince words about the role that the media plays, particularly at this time. Particularly also at the time that we are going into the elections next year,
They are by the corner.
National Assembly, and of course, there are
elections are
off-cycle
here.
elections also.
Yeah.
So off-cycle elections, we have like 7 states doing off-cycle elections. Next year we have Kogi and Bayelsa, of course, apart from the presidential and National Assembly elections. So the media plays a very, 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 very key role. Right now, the focus, a lot of people drive the conversation around how, yes, the social media has to be free press, and others on the other side of the divide will say, no, it has to be regulated. But right now, the upsurge in disinformation, hate speech, misinformation right now online is a source of worry.
Okay, and for you, what is your own opinion about regulating the social media, just from what you have just said now, because of the misinformation has become a source of worry to every one of us?
So I think they should do the same thing that the traditional media does. So the traditional
Regulated.
media is regulated,
Yeah.
but it still drives developmental tenets.
Okay.
Everybody's entitled to say what he needs to say, but within the ambit of the law. I think that same should also go to the social media.
Okay.
Because lately, for example, I mean, for journalists, if we really want to negate from our principles, we should have in our minds what happened in Rwanda.
Okay.
If you have visited Kigali
No.
and found out what happened during the genocide in the 80s, you would understand how, for example, you go to the studio, turn on your microphone, and whatever you say can escalate or diffuse
Can
tension.
make a people or a nation.
I mean, so for us, most times for us as media stakeholders, for example, we just see these things and feel like, is it not mine? Just on the mic and talk and go away. But it carries, it goes a lot beyond that.
Yeah.
You don't know where this broadband is headed to. You don't know the master behind us. You don't know how far it can go. Also, for example, a lot of people also look at the social media or look at media platforms for succor. Right now, it's safe to say that a lot of things are happening at the moment. The purchasing power of the people seem to be lower right now. And so they want to seek solace in their favorite platforms, in their favorite content, both online and in traditional media, to sort of have like a soothing balm. And that's why everybody runs to the media. So these days, a lot happens in the media. But our concern, for example, and my concern, for example, is the fact that we should go through the next electionary period and come out with the media being able to do and carry out its pivotal role, which of course is information, which of course is communicating the right message. And apart from the fact that it plays the entertainment role, the ability to carry all sides together.
All sides.
All sides. Marginalized groups, drive conversations around all sides. Okay. But then, if we want to deepen this discourse, we will now look at what happens, for example, during media proprietorship and the pendulum
owners
that
of
each
the
of them
media
exactly swing
and the
into
workers.
and all of that. So you hear stories that this particular media is tilted towards this particular party or individual. This one is tilted towards that. And thus, so you see, for example, that you want to talk about this other party on this station. There are instances where they will tell you, no, you can't talk about it.
Because
now
of interest.
That, of course, inhibits what democracy is all about. That, of course, inhibits what liberalism is all about. That's what the media should promote. So our focus, for example, my focus is, as we go into these electionary periods, we should amplify the voices of everybody.
But is it
PWDs.
possible
Is
for
it
us
possible?
to amplify the voices of everybody?
That's a
without
rhetorical
interest?
question.
Okay.
That's a rhetorical question. It is very possible. Once we do that, we are not only amplifying all voices, but we are creating a just, free, equitable society.
All right. There is this belief that the media or the journalist is the watchdog of every society. For you, how evident is this statement in Nigeria?
The
Since
media
we have
is.
Nigeria as a focus.
Yeah, the media is, but In the recent time, we have had reports. I mean, data also shows that a lot of journalists and a lot of media stations actually come under the sledge of those that inhibits how the media should operate privately. So a lot of journalists are being attacked by covering stories, covering news. In Nigeria, for example, there's a part of journalism that a lot of us do not want to venture into.
We run away from it.
Run away from it, and that's investigative journalism, because of the fear of others. So you want to, for example, unravel a particular circumstance in a particular ministry, how so money went this way, how so money went this way. Sometimes it could just even be your head of station that will come and tell you, hey, that story will not go, before it even goes out externally. You know, so these are all the things that inhibits journalists for being watchdogs of society. But like I said, my thesis is on what ought to be and what is. What ought to be is the fact that, yes, the journalist is the watchdog of the society, because the journalist is the one that feeds the society with information, particularly regarding to all sides, what is happening, doing an analysis of all the issues. So if you remember the training, we say we have, at the moment, in our journalism tenant, we have 5 W's and 1 H.
Yeah.
So for us right now, locating this discourse in the journalist being the watchdog, so it's 5 W's, 1 H, and 1 S. Because the S now is the solution. So a lot of people and the audience would also look at the journalist to be the one to say, after dissecting these issues, after opening up these issues, what then do you think should happen? And that's the S. So the journalist also, the journalist is no-brainer. Like he needs to equip himself with the skills to actually also dish out, information, which of course makes him, the watchdog of the society. So yes, that's what the journalist is.
Okay, but again, can we say that the same experience the journalists in Nigeria are facing is the same experience journalists in other society or clients they go through the same experience?
Yeah, they do.
Globally,
they do. Yes, it's a global problem. For us in Nigeria, for example, if there's any problem that we know that we face here and doesn't happen too much in other clients, particularly in developed clients like the US and the UK, will be remunerations for journalists.
In terms of welfare.
Yeah, in terms of welfare. Yeah. But for the other part where journalists are constantly attacked, yes, it happens. I mean, if you remember, there's an investigative journalist in Ghana who has his face masked. Now, he does that, he does that because he's passionate about the job, but doesn't want, until now, they are unable to unravel who he is.
The person is.
If, for example, his face is shown and is what we use in our parlance here in Nigeria, stepping on toes, your guess is as good as mine. So, all this that happen here happen in other climes. But the idea is, once you have good remuneration and a welfare to back you, then that could just be like an inspiration, for you to go to the job. But for a lot of us, for example, journalism you just really have to have passion for it.
Okay.
A lot of people have evolved and transitioned, into other sectors from journalism. So journalism gives you that name, and then you transition into probably the INGO, or a lot of our politicians, just transition, into politics and do other things. A lot of that can be attributed to the fact that maybe job security and the risky nature, of the job called, journalism. It's really risky. Because, for example, you just come off air and someone is sending you a check. Why did you do this way? Why did you do this
Apart
this way?
Apart from the calls, a lot of calls.
And, a lot of calls are, why did you hit us this way? Why did you hit us this way?
Yeah.
But for you to be in this profession, it is a duty to serve the society. It's a duty to serve humanity. So when once, for example, and that's the thing that when we get to the conversation about journalists now being politically minded, and so we have a lot of our colleagues
politically minded, financially minded,
they're friends with these people,
risk minded.
Exactly, they're friends with these people. So you write a story, for example, just to discredit this person and make the other person feel good. Then you won't sleep with your 2 eyes closed. When
I saw that story of that Ghanaian journalist, what comes to my mind was a Lagbaja.
Yeah.
Lagbaja. Can we begin to have some Lagbaja reporters in Nigeria?
Yeah, we have a few investigative journalists who, of course, are doing exceptionally well. Okay. No, a lot of them don't mask.
In the terms of masking themselves?
Well, a lot of them don't mask. There are a few of them that are doing very great work. Okay. But if you talk to a lot of them, I have about like 2 of them as friends, and it is really, really very risky what they do. Very risky, very daring, because most times you are going against the state. And you know the consequence of going against the state. You know the consequence of...
Your guess is as good as mine.
Exactly.
Okay. There is a new trend in the dissemination of information that is called issuing of press releases. Some see it as distorting the media or the journalist from gaining access to primary sources of information. And most of the time, the releases seem to be censored or compromised. How did we get here, and how do we overcome this practice? Is it because of the risks involved, or the aftermath of it? How did we get here?
So how we got here is the fact that a lot of journalists now work for politicians. And then, so when you work for
independent
politicians, or, for example, politicians, of course, that probably are tied to politicians. So, for example, the chief press secretary to a public office holder, you know, and a lot of that. So, when once you take that part, you are just going to stay there. It's always very difficult to be attached to a politician and not do the bidding
of
that politician. For example, maybe something is about to be unraveled, and then your principal will just tell you, please just do a press release in this regard. You are, of course, going to use words. Your story or your script will be tilted towards, they're not praising him, but also covering up, you know, the other part. So the thing about this is, for example, is how journalists should go the 9th mile. So, like you said, journalists, you can issue press releases and it ends there. The idea of that press releases means that don't look further. That's the story.
Just take it as it is.
But as a journalist, for example, who is passionate about the job and you want to unearth what is happening beneath that, then you can go further. Yeah. Another thing, of course, is the fact that, so when that comes out, there's always this network of journalists where, oh, it's my friend that is now the chief press secretary, and he releases that, and then probably shares a few bucks around. You know, when press releases come out sometimes, the most influential channels get some few bucks, you know, just to put out that press release and probably close some mouths. You know, that's usual practice in Nigeria, for example. So when that happens, it is safe to say that that door is closed. But the journalist that wants to do his job well and has the support of the newsroom, you know, it's different when a journalist is passionate about something and doesn't have the support of the newsroom. Your story won't fly. You can write a story, for example, and your editor will come and we just twist the story.
The editor is the last gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
News.
So you might have that story, for example, and then the editor comes and like it twists the whole story, and then you're going on
interest,
air,
maybe.
And then there are lots of interest. So we're having editors also who are friends of this sort of people. So it's, for example, because of also the welfare and remunerations, you know, that come from these specs, from press releases, we see journalists just being relaxed and no wanting to dig further. But there is more to it than meets the eye.
Okay.
We can take advantage of the relationship with these colleagues of ours who are attached to politicians to, you see, like you said earlier, apart from being the fact that you're the watchdog of society, everybody looks up to you to actually dish out the correct information. So, for example, a press release comes out, you can still ask questions.
Okay.
Seek audience, ask questions, find out. That's what I mean. For you to be a journalist is not easy, but it's easy. It's not piecemeal. Okay. But if you decide to stay on the path that you want to do your job right, it comes with a lot of hurdles. It comes with a lot of challenges. But it is possible that we can look beyond press releases. That, like what is happening right now, you know, press releases shuts the door, and you know, nobody's saying anything anymore. We have released it. But for a journalist, you can go the 9th mile, like I said, and find out what's happening, and then report your story with verified facts, looking at it from all sides. So for journalists, for example, they say when you write your story, you don't take sides. You just open it up, do your S, and just leave it that way, and allow the whatever outcomes, you know, to happen. So for some others, some of our editors to come and tell you, "You've been in this game. I know how it is. This is how it works here. Don't do this. Don't do that. Leave the story. Leave it. There's another assignment." Sometimes journalists even get chopped off from their beats because of the way they want to actually do the job right.
Okay.
But so these are some of the hurdles, you know, that we face, for example, in this profession.
And looking at it from all sides, there's this objective reporting that should be on the mind of every serious journalist, especially in a time as this, when we are very, very close to electioneering campaign is here.
We can't overemphasize that.
At all.
Objectivity at this time.
Yes, and there's something you taught us some time ago about fact-checking, and where is the place of fact-checking in a time like this for a journalist that is ready to look in between politics and the economy?
So fact-checking, for example, used to be our gatekeepers in the newsroom. If we take a chronology of how fact-checking started, our gatekeepers in the newsroom used to be fact-checkers. So what that meant is, before the advent of digital media, for example, you are bringing your story, you are saying who said this, when was this said, where's the so our gatekeepers in the newsroom, the editors would look at it and say, okay, this is right, this is what this person said, where's your midget, for example, if you're a radio reporter, or where's your let's play the camera, let's play the tape, and let's be very sure that the person said this. So but with the advent of digital media right now, you can actually fact check stories online. There are applications, there are websites that you can go and you can fact check stories. If you remember the training that we had last week, where we also gave vivid examples of how someone can even clone your Facebook and Twitter account.
It look
and it
almost
looks
real.
almost like it. So there are websites that can actually do that.
But again, these websites, can we say this website can be manipulated?
Very good question.
By the powers that be?
Very good question. So they cannot be at the moment. They cannot be manipulated, because what those websites do, for example, is to see if that story, for example, that is fake has been used before. So what it does is to track, for example, the sources. That's what fact-checking is all about, is the sources. And some of these sources of data, for example, have to be released by probably statutory government agencies or individuals. So when once this data do not come from these places, it is termed to be fake and unreliable. So what those websites do is just to triangulate to see if it is fake or not. And you know that, for example, when you are trying to clone someone's original page, you know, to actually create something fake, we call it parody. When you're trying to create that, you use probably tools like Photoshop, you know, Adobe PageMaker, you know, and a lot of that.
All of them.
What that app, or what these apps and websites actually fact-check will do, is just to see if those tools were used.
Okay.
So if you just put a particular information on those websites and you are trying to fact-check, what it just does is to show you that this particular thing has been used in so time, these tools was used, and it should just tell you. One thing it does is, for example, when you want to fact-check a particular, it shows you what the person said, what it actually is, and why it is fake. So the website is able to triangulate and give you, you know, all of all those data. You want to agree with me what happened in the weekend, where a major news outlet started a story of how a presidential candidate, you know, is being indicted in the US for certain offenses, and the major, you know, news outlet went to shop with it, and then other smaller news outlets and then blogs also went to shop with it. And of course, you remember what
without finding out
without finding out, you know, whether it's true or not. Probably put a call to Oga Festus Okoye or something and say, did the commission put this out? You know, so that's the thing with fact checking and how you just need to go the extra mile. When you see a particular information,
don't just pick it.
For example, don't pick it. Don't go to bed with it. So, for example, because a lot of us might not like that particular candidate. As long as there's a bad report about that candidate, then it is true.
Oh, where's your source?
But there's a lot that happens beneath. And then so we saw that the major news outlet actually apologized. And like I told you before we came on set, it was actually what we did at the training that has to do fact check. Now, every journalist prints, backroom staff,
electronic,
electronic,
even
everybody should,
social media,
should be able to learn how to fact check.
In all cases.
In all cases, particularly around elections.
Before any news is disseminated.
Before any information that comes out. Primarily, for example, you don't have data. Fact checking means that if a news comes out, there is a source. You can second check your source by calling or by sending a message.
Because I was coming to data.
Yeah.
The problem of data is another.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Big problem,
so let's do the traditional way of fact checking, for example. There's a source. Why not make a call? Why not send a message? You know that some of our news reports, they will put, okay, we tried all calls to so proved fertile as it did not pick or something. Yeah, that is fair enough. But when you see such information, traditionally, even if you don't have data on your phone to go to this website to fact check, you can make a call, you can send a message, you can tell your editor, please can you kindly reach out to this person? This is what we are hearing. This seems to go viral. Is it true? When you reach out, the person will be like, okay, it's true or yes. Once someone from the commission or someone from that statutory government agency can say, okay, yes, it is, yes, it is not, then that's fact-checking on its own. So fact-checking, like I said, started traditionally. The reason why we have digital fact-checking right now is the fact that because we seem to be in an era of the new media where a lot happens, fact-checking also has now evolved into such where, for example, if you hear any information, you can just put it on the website, put it on the app, and it's going to give you all the details, and then you can now cross-check that with what you have, immediately change it to suit that, pass it to your editor, and then, you know, it's as good as that. So you're safe. You go home, sleep with your 2 eyes closed. And because particularly around elections like this, the information that we consume, particularly on the social media, is very fast. A lot of it are misinformation. Then we also have the upsurge in the use of hate speech, which of course has the propensity. That's a different
ball game again.
That's a different ball game. That a lot is happening on hate speech at the moment. So for Search for Common Ground also, we have digital tracking device. We do a lot of social listening that track a lot of hate speech. We tell you demography, the number of people that actually are using this hate speech, and then we also come up with mitigating measures like alternative peace messages, you know, to mitigate all this.
Yeah, okay. For the benefit of our viewer and listener, especially those that are not media professional, how will you expatiate the effect of our inability to check facts before dissemination, sending the information? For example, now on social media, you see some unsolicited information about maybe politicians. Now that we are in the political era, politicians, one will send from A to B, send to you, Perry will forward to me, I'll forward to the other person.
WhatsApp is...
yeah, the impact. What will be the effect on our economy?
The effect on our economy will really be very, very bad. For example, if we want to snowball into the political economy, for example, a lot of people actually use this passing of fake messages to actually discredit brands, you know, and also, for example, they will tell you that this particular brand, they found out that, you know, it's just very easy to actually make things go viral these days. You can just call a particular brand and say, oh, it's a particular brand, I did this and there was cockroach inside or something, and then you forward, please don't use this brand, and this one forwards to the next person.
And before you know.
But I mean, before you know, there's going to be like a decline in the use of that brand. People don't buy it anymore. That also affects production. And meanwhile, it's just fake. It's just particularly, you know, targeted, you know, at a particular individual. So the political economy around that is the fact that, number one, it would, of course, lead to the decline in the use of that particular brand. That also affects its production. If that continues unabated, it also affects, for example, the workforce. Because when production is not on, when a lot of people don't do that anymore, the production is declined. I mean, what they do in the boardroom is like, okay, so we're not making a lot of sales anymore. What we need to do, we can actually locate this discourse also for media channels. So we have trusted media channels where a lot of people advertise their product and all of that. And then someone can just come up one day and say, they are sympathetic to a particular candidate. Please don't patronize them anymore. That's very disastrous. So you see that a lot of, I mean, for media brands in this country, 70% of their revenue comes from payments from brands and commercials and a lot of that. So once that drops, it also affects the staff, the workforce. People would have to go home. just because someone peddled a particular false information,
fake.
you know, around that, which can be termed to be fake and which can be termed to be misinformation. So that's the political economy around a lot of this. There's going to be job losses. That's the effect of some of those. If we continue with all this false information, there's going to be panic. So if you remember during was it Ebola at that period, where I don't know how that thing started, but all of a sudden a lot of people were baiting with salt. You know, I mean, how viral that thing went.
It was fake.
I mean, I was getting calls, hey, bait with salt, or you would. A lot of people were baiting with salt, and I mean, it was just fake.
And that created further problems.
That created a lot of tension. So you'll see, for example, hey, people spending a lot of information. I mean, it's really, really sad. And for us now, we need to start looking at steps, you know, to curtail, you know, a lot of all these things. Because trust me, it has the propensity to cause violence, and it has the propensity also to cause panic in a fragile society like ours here in Nigeria.
All right, we'll take a quick break now, and we'll be right back. When we are back, we are going to look at the steps, what to consider in order to curtail fake reporting and misinformation. Stay with us.
We are a nation blessed with people of diverse cultures, religions, languages, and opinions. It is ironic that we are now being ripped apart by our greatest strength, our diversity. We have allowed intolerance, insensitivity, bigotry, and nepotism to blind our vision of the greatness we can achieve working together as one. We may not have the same culture, nor religion, nor language, but we all belong to the same nation by the divine will of God. We did not choose to be Nigerians. Nigeria chose us. This nation is our divine heritage, and if we open our eyes, we will realize that what divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And by the comparison and conciliation of our differences, we will grow until our differences disappear. Our unity cannot be willed by mere declarations, nor do we get unity by ignoring the questions that beg for answers. We must celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our unity. Our strength is not in our numbers, but in our unity, because even the weak become strong when united. Nigeria unite. This message is brought to you by Abuja Broadcasting Corporation, owners and operators of ASO Radio 93.5 FM Abuja, ASO Television Star Times Channel 127, Free TV Channel 507, and UHF Channel 38.
Glad to know you are here with us on this edition, a very interesting edition of Business and Economy, where we are taking a serious look at the political and the economical front, as well as the role of the media in ensuring that a sustainable development is achieved. We are looking at the objectives of what a media person, like a journalist or a media, should embark upon to ensure that in this era of politics, credible reporting is ensured in order to maintain a very peaceful economy as well as a sustainable development in the economical front. My guest is Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry is still here. And Mr. Perry, before we went on the break, we were trying to look at the steps, what fact-checking can do for those of us in the media as well as those that are not media personnel in order to ensure a sustainable development in Nigeria, especially in a time like this, where electioneering campaign is ongoing and elections are by the corner. So for you, what are the steps or what are the considerations to consider in fact-checking, especially for the media?
So for example, the way fact-checking works right now is you don't even need to be in the newsroom to be a fact-checker.
Okay.
As an individual, for example, you just need to be equipped with the skill on how to fact check, and then you are good to go. So these days now, for example, you are first an individual even before you're a media stakeholder or before you're a journalist. So the ability for you to acquire skills to actually fact check that when you see a particular information So the thing about fact-checking also and information lately is the fact that even if the source might be credible, because we have had situations where, for example, where we have had fake news peddled by credible sources. So as an individual, for example, when once you see that news, before you share, it is just safe for you to fact-check first to confirm if that is right or wrong. First. I mean, so, of course, you know that statutorily for media stakeholders and as journalists, you know, of course, it's at your beck and call to actually do that even before you get to the newsroom or before you get to the first gatekeeper, which, of course, is your editor. So first, you have to be equipped with the skills to fact-check. So fact-checking, for example, it's a special skill. There are websites, there are apps that you can actually go to, and there are also organizations that support trainings, you know, on fact-checking at no expense. At no expense. Zero expense. The idea, for example, is just to be able to fact-check and to understand. Putting it loosely, you can actually even go on YouTube, or you can even go on Google, and you would have self-explanatory, self-taught videos on how to fact-check. The thing about it is, do we have the time to do that? We must create the time to do that. Okay. Because once we do that, so when you see a particular information, and you are wondering, is this right or wrong? The next thing you just need to do is probably just go to that website, download that particular app, and then you get the necessary information.
And because of our time, what is your own organization doing to ameliorate the various challenges of the media, the journalists, and those in power, in position of power?
So what we are doing, for example, at Search for Common Ground is, we have identified this as a problem. And for example, Search for Common Ground is a peace-building NGO. What makes Search for Common Ground unique is, number one, is the largest peace-building NGO in the world. We're in over 40 countries. We started working in Nigeria in 2004, implementing programs across all sectors. So we have resilience programs, we have programs around farmer headers. Right now we have over 8 projects that we're implementing across. And one that is pivotal to the election is one that we're implementing right now, which is the Sustaining Electoral Engagement for Democracy. We've been able to identify the fact that the media and the media stakeholders play a key role in changing stereotypes.
Very critical.
And how the media can be used as a positive change agent in shaping opinion for good. So like I said earlier, we're locating this discourse in the Media for Development thesis, which says that with the media, if the media is free and fair, if the media is devoid of misinformation, the theory of change is that we're going to have a sane society. And what we did, for example, is the fact that with the upsurge in fake news, misinformation and disinformation, last week you were also part of the training. Ahead of the 2023 elections, we are strengthening the capacity of media stakeholders to mitigate hate speech, for example, and not only that, also be equipped with the skills to carry out conflict-sensitive reporting in line with what we call our common ground approach. Our common ground approach means that we are building conversations in the fact that in every conflict, everyone can be a winner if we focus on the things and the indicators and factors that unite us rather than that, you know, which sets us apart. So it means that we are moving towards collaborative efforts instead of being adversaries or towards adversarial ends. Like I said earlier, we have 7 off-cycle election states. We were able to strengthen the capacity of media stakeholders, civil society stakeholders in Ekiti and Osun states. Now it's national level, so we are focusing on media stakeholders, civil society, because these two play key roles in driving the development methods in the society. Okay,
in just a sentence, okay. What is your advice to the journalists or the media in sustaining economic development within this period, particularly?
Be able to fact-check, be able to report all spectrums, all perspectives, and stay impartial.
Okay. Stay impartial and ensure that you fact-check in order to have a sustainable economy, particularly in an electioneering campaign year. And with that advice, we have come to the end of today's edition of Business and Economy. The guest we have been speaking with is the project coordinator Public Policy Specialist of the Common Ground Nigeria, Mr. Perry Tukuwe. Mr. Tukuwe, we appreciate you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you for your time.
I hope if we call you again the next time you...
I'm always available at your beck and call.
Okay, and to you out there, our viewer and listener, we sincerely thank you so much for being with us. Always stay with us for more interesting programs. Have a great day.